Good evening, Detroit, and welcome to tonight's edition of Spotlight. I'm your host for the evening. I'm Nolan Finley from the Detroit News, along with David Dulio, Director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University and one of the sharpest political analysts in Michigan. And Dave and I are going to rear back here for the next hour and talk politics and other subjects, and you're welcome to join us at 1-800-859-0957, 1-800-859-0WJR. But before we get into politics, Dave, let's talk about civility. Dave runs, as I said, the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University, and at Oakland U, they've set a very audacious goal for themselves. They want to be the most civil and civically engaged campus in America. And he and President Ora Peskovitz were very instrumental in helping Steve Henderson and I put together our book, the Civility Book, A Guide to Building Bridges Across the Political Divide, published by Wayne State University Press, available on Amazon and bookstores and anywhere you find books. We worked with Oakland U throughout the last few years as this book came together and as the Great Lakes Civility Project came together. And we appreciate that, Dave. Talk to us a little, if you will, about your center and your goal, what you're hoping to accomplish for your students.
Sure. And first, Nolan, thanks for having me along for the ride tonight. This is
we're riding you, Dave.
And thanks for the kind words, of course. It has been an absolute pleasure to work alongside you and Stephen as you have masterfully rolled out the Civility Project and I think really have made an impact here in Southeast Michigan and across the country as you guys have taken that message far and wide. Where's the farthest reaches that you guys have taken that message?
So far, live, I think it was Austin, Texas.
Nice.
Which we really enjoyed.
I bet, yeah. So the idea of this Center for Civic Engagement is, I'll be honest, it's not novel. There are plenty of these across the country at institutions like Oakland University, but the impetus for it is really lack of civility. And it was a couple of straws that broke the camel's back for me going on 8 years ago that pushed me to create this center. And one of them was the realization, or like I said, a straw that broke the camel's back, that civic literacy just stinks. And it's among students and it's among the general public. And what really crystallized it for me is I went into a room full of Intro to American Politics students on the first day of a semester, and I gave them all the U.S. citizenship test. Mm-hmm. I gave it to them in an easy way. I gave it to them in a multiple choice way. And I picked 10 questions, right? Yeah. Not like somebody who wants to become a naturalized citizen would get it, where it's verbal and it's 10 random questions from, frankly, some pretty hard and obscure questions about American government from a list of 100. Gave this to our students, a bunch of 18 to 20-year-olds, and 40% of them would not have become citizens that day because they couldn't pass the citizenship test.
So you're trying to raise the literacy, but also trying to teach them, as Steve and I do with this civility book, try to encourage them to the idea that they can engage with one another politically without consequence.
Yes.
And without destroying
and that's really,
relationships.
And that's really the other, and I would say the biggest piece of it is, right, in 2016, 2015, it just became clear that Americans can't talk to each other anymore.
No.
Without, with disagreement leading to somebody thinking that the other one is evil, right? And that's what we have really tried to lean into here is finding others, finding models like you and Stephen, to demonstrate that is not the way forward, that it doesn't have to be that way. It is just what we are accustomed to, and we should try to break this mold. So, what we want to do, one of the things we want to do with the center is have Oakland University be known as a convener of conversations about issues of public importance, be a place where people can come for this stuff, but have those discussions in a civil and respectful manner.
And you plan to incorporate the civility book into the curriculum and into the center this fall, correct?
Absolutely, and actually not just this fall, but over a 2-year period.
Okay.
We're going to start with, and folks, get your copies quickly because they are selling fast. We had to. They were on back order when I tried to get some
That's
for
good
the. So congratulations on your success.
That's great news.
We are going to start with a couple of our. There are big populations on our campus: student athletes
Mhm.
and honors college students. In the fall, we're going to start to roll it out to athletics, and I actually think that there's a really great connection between athletics and civility because of this concept of sportsmanship, right? Where
Right.
athletes are on the field, on the pitch, on the court, and they are battling, right? They are putting everything into it. But at the end of the game, what do? They walk across the sideline and shake hands.
And that's what we want to encourage. And I was thinking about civic engagement today when I was reading the new AP NORC poll that found just 20% of people age 18 to 29, I think it was 18 to 40 actually, are politically engaged, care about politics, and are paying attention to what's going on in their government. Just 20%. And I don't know what your experience has been over the years, but is that a fairly consistent number? Are things getting worse?
I'd like to see their data over time, but just anecdotally, apathy has been pretty constant in the 23 or so years that I've been at Oakland. Right? I mean, it just is. There are some myths that students, young people in general, I think, fall victim to, and one of the biggest ones is that politics doesn't matter to them, that it doesn't impact their life, right? And frankly, that is an easy to dispel myth. We can do it in about 30 seconds, and we just start talking about the roads and tuition, right, to college kids, right? Stuff that gets them every day,
every single day. But you have to ask, why would they engage, David? The way politics are today. I mean, when you think about the just abject partisanship and the poisonous partisan motivation of our politics today, where all that matters is your party gaining power and keeping power. And what has happened to the idea of being driven by principles? I couldn't sit here and tell you today what the Democratic Party stands for or the Republican Party stands for, other than getting themselves elected, holding on to power, and keeping that power for as many years as they can. And I don't know, I can't define for you what either party hopes to accomplish once they get that power.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about why people are, and it's not just young people, but it's across the spectrum. People are pulling away from politics. A lot of folks in the sort of normies of politics are, or what sort of political professionals might call normies, not the extremes, right? Are removing themselves from politics. And it's because they don't like what they see. And we'll come back to the civility book, right? It's you guys are models of how people who share different viewpoints and have differing opinions,
right,
should get along, should challenge each other, right? And maybe we'll get into this in the next segment, but why did you write this book, right? It was sort of, is it a natural evolution of the Civility Project?
Yes.
That so many people have heard, but what was the impetus for writing?
Well, we wrote it because we wanted to press this idea that it's okay to disagree, and we're not trying to get people to agree to disagree and then avoid each other and discussions of politics. We want people to agree or to find value in their disagreements. We want them to disagree as passionately and be able to learn from each other. And that's what Steve and I have done over the years. But this disenfranchised feeling voters have, particularly young people, I think, and we'll talk about in the next segment, I think is helping give rise to the attraction of independent candidates and this independent political movement that I believe is going to really grow over the next year. And we'll talk about Mike Duggan's independent bid for governor when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Nolan Finley of the Detroit News with Dave Dulio of Oakland University. And Dave, we promised to talk about Mike Duggan, and that's what we're going to do. I mean, this lifelong Democrat, mayor of Detroit. A year ago, he was working to get Joe Biden or Kamala Harris elected. Now he's declared himself an independent, running for governor. Does he have a chance?
I think he absolutely has a chance. I mean, we start from the fact that Mike Duggan is not dumb, and he would not do this willy-nilly, right? He has, I am certain, a path laid out in a campaign plan in his office that is a legitimate way to win the governor's office. And I'm sure that they have vote targets in different regions of the state where they know what, all right, if we can get this many votes out of Oakland County and this many votes out of Wayne County, that's their plan, right? Mm-hmm. And, but it gets back to what we were talking about in the previous segment, that the time is right for an independent candidate. And that's because so many people are pulling away from the traditional party structures. I happen to see Mayor Duggan talk about his bid at Rochester Hills Mayor Brian Barnett had a gathering he calls the Mayor's Business Council in Rochester last week, and had Mayor Duggan there, and the mayor showed a slide, some data that I use in class all the time, and it's Gallup's party identification trend line, and it from the early 2000s till now, the independent line is on this meteoric rise, and both parties are taking a free fall where less than 30% of Americans say that they're Republicans and less than 30% say that they're Democrats. 43% say they're independents. That is prime time for somebody to take advantage of that.
Particularly with the message he's bringing, and that is people are tired of their government not working for them. And it isn't. And I will say this, if this Michigan budget isn't passed by the deadline, October 1st, if we go to a government shutdown in Michigan because Republicans and Democrats can't work together to do the basic job of governing, the Republican and Democratic candidates might as well pull out of the race and hand it to Mike Duggan. That's the absolute best thing that could happen to that independent candidacy.
It would not surprise me if that happens, that he is on the steps of the state capitol on October 1st.
Count on
saying, "See, I told you so."
Count on it. We got a call, Brad from Rochester Hills. Welcome, Brad.
Hey, guys. Great to be with you. I appreciate hearing Nolan Finley when he's a guest on any of the talk shows during the day, whether he's on with Kevin Beats late in the morning and or early afternoon with Paul W. Smith, and appreciate the work that Nolan is doing with Stephen Henderson. I used to listen to him on WDEG radio not too many years ago, and I know Stephen has his own ways of doing his own bang-up job of trying to bring civility into the mix, just like Nolan Finley is. And my comments for Dave Dulio, I don't know of any political science professor at Oakland University because I live down the road from the campus. But I think Dulio might be the only guy that brings civility and makes sense out of a political science from both sides of the aisle. I live in an apartment community that's mostly polarized, but at least as I told you, call screen, I know where I stand on things as a Trump supporter and registered Republican, because I believe that our party is the party of Judeo-Christian values, at least adheres to it to the best of our creed, and also of the defense of our First Amendment of freedom and free
Brad,
speech.
Brad, are you willing to engage with people who feel differently than you and engage in a civil, productive manner?
Uh, that's a good question. Right now, I'm not at liberty to do that because my time is too valuable just to engage in other people's culture.
Well, Brad, you try to do better, okay?
We got to get Brad a copy of the book.
Yeah, we'll get you a copy of the book, Brad. Thanks for calling in. I think, again, that there is a frustration that will benefit Duggan and other independent candidates. And I think one of the keys here is I don't believe he's going to be the only independent candidate, major party, major office candidate we see out there. I mean, Elon Musk today said he's going to start the American Party, which, a third party certainly have the money to make an impact there. If anybody could make a third party viable, I would assume it's the richest man in the world. But you have others across the country, and you have no labels who, they're looking at Mike Duggan's candidacy with the idea of helping him get national donors, which is one thing I think not running with a party is going to deprive Duggan of that sort of organization and fundraising network. But, if he does, get this thing up and moving and become a factor in this election, who does he hurt?
Well, just because, as you said, he's a lifelong Democrat. I mean, I think he's going to have trouble divorcing himself from that party label, and I think we also have to consider the fact that so far Mike Duggan has really had the stage to himself, and
Right.
and the Democrats and Republicans are just now getting started. It's crazy to think, right? But we're not even we're not even to Labor Day of 2025, and we're starting to talk about primaries for the next year. But just wait until the Republicans start to message against Duggan, and they're going to start to say things like he's a Trojan horse and don't trust him. He's going to get in and he's going to do all the wacky Democrat things, and so you better not vote for him. Voting for Duggan's a vote for a Democrat. And that's going to be hard to counter.
That's going to be the message. And I asked him about that the other day. And I said, well, you held certain positions as a Democrat. What positions have changed now that you're independent? He said, I haven't changed any positions. What I stand for is making government work. And I think that's going to be a powerful
Can he get away
message.
with that, though? Can
I
he
don't
get
know.
away with that?
I don't know, Dave. I mean, because every debate, he's going to have to answer issue-specific questions.
Like abortion.
Yeah, like right to work and other things. And if he comes down, if he sounds like a Democrat, and we've already got a Democrat on that stage, I think the Republicans benefit. But if Jocelyn Benson were a stronger Democratic candidate, I don't think Duggan would have much of a chance. But I think there's enough people who aren't so crazy about her in that party who will gravitate to Duggan. I don't think she can draw enough independents to make up for the Democratic voters she's losing. She's going to lose to Mike Duggan. But in the Republican field, you got John James up there as the presumed leader, and after that, there's no real standout in that field. There's some good candidates, people I admire, but in terms of a standout candidate, I'm not really seeing it.
And we'll see if John James follows through on this governor's race, because Donald Trump wants him to stay in the House.
And I think that's probably what he's going to end up having to do if that's what Trump wants. And I expect Trump's going to need him there, because we'll talk after the break in our next segment about the midterms next year and how they're shaping up. And I think John James will be a key player in those midterms. And I'm not sure in a three-way race with Benson and Duggan that he prevails. I mean, he's lost 2 statewide races by narrow margins. Not sure, if Congress is not the best place for him at the moment, and let another Republican carry the mantle this time.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be there has been some rhetorical pressure from the president, directed in Mr. James'
Yes.
direction. I think there's just more to come. They will need a strong candidate in that district in a year like 26.
And notice 2 things. The money's not exactly pouring into John James. The donors are holding back. And I haven't heard anybody of note stand up and say, well, I'm going to run, the Republican side saying, I'm going to run for that seat. So I think there's a lot of folks out there expecting him to come back to Macomb County. This is Spotlight. I'm Nolan Finley with David Dulio, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Well, welcome back. You can join our conversation by calling 1-800-859-0957, 1-800-859-0WJR. And Mark from Rochester wants to join our
gentlemen.
conversation.
Great topic. Thank you for discussing what's very important for people here. Couple of things. One, nobody really believes that Mike Duggan, while he's a very good man and has done a good job in Detroit, thanks to the former governor who put it in his lap after the bankruptcy, but nobody believes he's an independent. He's a lifelong Democrat. He campaigned just a few months ago for Kamala Harris, so that's not going to sit well with the people. The second one, the 10th district, John James's seat. We have a young man that's put his hat in the ring. His name is Robert Ludgerai. He's a former Wayne County prosecutor who has done a tremendous job, prosecuted over 2,000 cases. He's volunteered thousands of hours in the community, founded and started the Young Republican Party in Macomb County. He was the chair of that. Student body president of his Brother Rice High School, Holy Cross College in Notre Dame. Very active, true conservative, really good guy of the people. He just resigned from his seat because he had moved up to Macomb County Prosecutor's Office, and he's concentrating 100%. He's got great backing, good financing, very articulate, very dedicated, very clean. I think it's going to be his seat.
Well, thanks, Mark. Thanks for passing that on. We'll have to look him up, and we appreciate your call. Warren from Plymouth is on the line. Warren, welcome to Spotlight.
Hey, Nolan and Dr. Doolittle. Good evening. I just wanted to call in. I'm a high school government civics teacher in a private school, a small high school, only 250 kids. But the lack of civic knowledge is unbelievable out in the streets. And I tell my students, I teach government. I don't teach politics, and that's the problem. And I blame a lot of this on the public schools, who, these teachers that, America's bad because of this and that. That's not what you're there for. You're there to teach them what are the foundations of government. What do you have? And, it's ironic. Tomorrow we're getting into how do you become a citizen in the United States? What do you have to do, okay, if you're not born here, for instance? So, I think those are things that are really lacking these days. And my kids, well, students, they'll know that stuff. And I talk to a lot of them frequently. And I've been doing this for many, many years. And they still remember some of those things. I try not to put a spin on it as best I can.
Well, Warren, that's a great message, and we thank you for your thanks for your call, and thanks for your work. More importantly, I think you nail it when you say, I teach government, not politics. And I'd be lying if I said that there are a lot of instructors, I think, in the high schools and in and in colleges across the country where it's the opposite, right? And that's an issue. I think the best compliment that I can get at the end of a semester is a student comes up and says, "Yeah, are you a Democrat or Republican?"
Yeah.
If I do that, I've done my job,
Yeah,
right? And I try to be an equal opportunity offender. Not that there's, not much. There's plenty of opportunity to pick on people these days. But
And Dave, I think it's also important to remember that dissent, vigorous dissent, is a key piece of our democracy. It's an essential agreement. If we woke up tomorrow and everybody agreed on everything, I think our democracy would be over. Our country would be over. And there's a lot of places where agreement is forced.
right,
And and we want to not become that country. And what Steve and I say in the book, in the civility book, as well as in the civility project presentations, is that all good people come to their opinions in the same way. They take the information, the data available, they run it through the filters of their own personal values and experiences, and they come up with a viewpoint. And if it's different than mine, different from yours, there's nothing threatening about it. It's an opening for a productive conversation if you're willing to find out what those experiences and values are.
yeah, and I think on your point about if everybody had the same opinions,
Yeah.
democracy would crumble. James Madison, for my money, the most important founding father,
There you go.
would have agreed, right? He was very concerned about what he called factions, and in a majority faction in particular, which is when all of the majority just constantly voted down the minority, right? There's how do you deal with majority faction, and one of the ways that he said you could do that is by giving everybody the same opinion, and he just laughed that off as absurd, right?
Yeah.
One thing we haven't touched on in all of this discussion about civility and the back and forth and the rancor and vitriol is the role of the media. As a member of the media, what can you give an assessment of how the media plays a role in driving this?
Depends which media you're talking about. And, I think that I know at the news, we like to consider ourselves a forum for political discussion, a place where we can foster healthy discourse and, of course, do our jobs as watchdogs of the process. I think you have a lot of fragmented media out there that is profiting from our division. You got these cable TV stations and all, some of the fringe radio stations, and particularly social media today, profits from keeping us afraid of each other. And if we agree, if we start to agree and start to learn to not fear each other, to be able to talk productively, they go out of business. And I think our political parties also profit from keeping us divided. Listen to the advertising during this political season or any political season. It's all about, I'm going to fight for you. There's that combative language, and it's all about demonizing the other party. If you elect this person, whole world's going to go to hell. And so they want to keep us fearful, and we've got to be a lot more discerning consumers of news, because there's really the hierarchy of credibility when it comes to news sources is getting so hard to discern today, because you go online and a thoughtful analysis from Dave Dulio is right there next to Bob the blogger in his mother's basement, and you've got to really be careful about deciding credibility and choosing credible sources.
It's hard, isn't it?
It
It's
is.
hard in the information overload that we have, with all of the possibilities that are out there. It's hard to know what's legit and what's not.
So, Dave, looking ahead to 2026, good year or bad year for Republicans? Will they break the mold of off-year elections going against the party in power?
Well, history tells us that midterms are usually bad for the party of the president at the national level. Since FDR's time, there have only been 2 instances where the party of the president has gained seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. There's a few more where they've gained seats in the U.S. Senate, but still mostly losses. So history would tell us that Republicans are going to have a rough go of it. They're not necessarily, that doesn't always hold, as I said, and I think, and we'll get into this in the next segment, that they're trying to take some steps to ensure that they don't have as bad a year as some would predict.
You can join our conversation at 1-800-859-0957, 1-800-859-0WJR. We'll be right back. So, Dave, before the break, you were talking about, you were predicting that it's going to be a bad year at the national level for Republicans, as most midterm elections are. Republicans are doing some things, and now Democrats are joining them to sort of mitigate their losses. And, you know, it's, again, some pretty sleazy stuff that contributes to this lack of trust in the system and in the process. But when you take a look at the impact on state races, is it true, too, that the party of the president will do poorly even in state races? We know in 2018, the anti-Trump movement just absolutely wiped out Republicans up and down the ballot in Michigan. That would be a real disaster for them in 26 when every single state-wide office or state office is on the ballot.
Yeah, and I think that has held. And Gretchen Whitmer actually bucked the trend in 2022, right? It was Biden's midterm when you would expect Democrats to have a bad year. And they did in the House and Senate, but that trend that we had seen for decades at the governor's level did not hold. So now we have 2 more competing trends, right? We've got that midterm effect, right? Does that advantage Democrats because Trump's in the White House? But the other trend is, you know, Michigan usually changes after 2 years, or I'm sorry, 2 terms of a governor's service, right? Where they don't extend
always.
You know, the last one was you know, John Engler, right? And before that, I think we have to go back to the 50s before we see a 3 terms served by candidates of the same party, right? So we tend there it's a question of which is going to be more have more of an impact, right?
So let's look at some of those races. I mean, you have a open Senate seat. Republicans haven't won one of those in Michigan in a quarter century or more. It's been
since Spence Abraham in 94.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Long time.
And so you've got competitive primaries and open primaries in both parties. Both the Democrats and the Republicans will be nominating a candidate. No incumbent there. I was having dinner before the show, and a Democratic pundit tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Watch out for Abdul al-Sayed." And I said, well, it's not a name I would have put at the top of that race, which on the Democratic side now includes State Senator Mallory McMurrow and Congresswoman Haley Stevens. He said, progressives will vote for Abdul Sayed, and that's about 35% of the Democratic primary vote, and then Stevens and McMurrow will split the rest. What's your take on that?
I think that's entirely plausible. You know, I think the McMurrow has shown that she can raise money. So has Stevens. They will be well funded for this primary battle. It's a question of can Mr. al-Sayed raise the funds necessary to campaign the way he's going to have to. I think that it's also the sort of underdog candidate, which I would say he is, just because he's not held office before, and he's run before, but not been terribly successful. They're advantaged when the field is large, and even beyond 2, right, is a component there. I think the one more comment about the governor's race, right?
Hmm.
Mike Duggan he's maybe looking at the same dynamics and
Sure.
saying, I don't want to be a Democrat in a year where Democrats might they may not be as successful as we would think, right? The all depends on when the economy, how the economy's looking, what happens at war in Gaza with Ukraine, right? There's so much out there. He's probably not counting on it being a good year for Democrats. So I'm going to chart my own course.
So Mike Rogers, he, running on the Republican side, all alone at the moment, I believe, and of course he came awfully close to winning in 2024. What's he got to do to get over the top, and how would a candidate like that buck the sort of midterm curse for the party in power? And do you run with Donald Trump?
I think that, well, he did last time around.
He did.
It was, he was arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder.
Yep.
And I think that's going to be hard to walk away from this time around. I think not having a competitive primary will help him immensely. He will not burn through cash like he did or had to in 24. I think a bloody primary always hurts that whoever emerges from that. So he won't have that, and Democrats look like they are going to have one of those. So I think that bodes well for him. I think he's going to have to thread the needle on how much he embraces Trump, and without a primary, maybe he can start to try to walk that back a little bit. But again, I think that's going to be just hard to do rhetorically.
So is Trump in a better place than he was in 2018, before the 2018 election? I mean, he's had certainly some successes. Immigration's a success. Economy is still strong. I don't know what tariffs are going to do to it, but you look at that stock market, every day sets a new record, it seems. It's approaching 4,500.
45,000.
45,000 today. Yeah. And so, pocketbook issues aren't such a concern today. Again, they may be a year from now, but Trump seems to be, you mentioned his popularity rating before the show.
Yeah. According to Real Clear Politics, their average of polls, Donald Trump today has a higher job approval rating than both George W. Bush and Barack Obama at the same point in their second terms.
Mm-hmm.
And you would never guess that if you just listen to the coverage, right? And look, Trump is underwater in terms of job approval, right? He's only at 45.8% approval, but that's a full point higher than Obama was at this point in his presidency in 2013, and George W. Bush was at 43.5 in 2005, right? So
right,
he's in a better spot, and the number one driver of those midterm losses in both the House and the Senate is presidential job approval. So that's what we have to keep our eye on.
At the same time, there's just so much disruption. I mean, he is engaged in so many different areas that you would think, why don't you just let that one be and concentrate, on the big picture stuff? I mean, he considers himself the solution to every problem. And there's a risk, I think, of him getting stretched so thin and involved in so many different things, and the losses start balancing out the successes that it's a lot for people to absorb. And I think folks get nervous. I mean, everybody says they want change, but folks get nervous when there's too much change all at once. But my hope, Dave, and I know yours, is that we're going to have some vigorous debates, and there's going to be a lot to argue about over the next couple of years, a lot to get steamed up about. I hope we can learn to have those discussions without it leading to hating one another. We can disagree passionately. We can get loud. We don't have to hate. And we have to keep in mind, and I know you'll agree with this, that we have to think about, does it really matter? Does the world change if you're able to pound your views into your neighbor's head or your brother's head or your spouse's head? Why is it so important that everybody think the same way you do? And I think if we keep that front and center, we may get through this, Dave.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the great things that you and Stephen talk about in your presentations is that you're not trying to change each other's minds, right?
No.
You're trying to learn from each other. You're trying to grow and even challenge yourself, right? That's there. It doesn't have to end with convincing somebody that you're right.
And the world's not going to win or end if your side
Goodness,
loses
no.
the election. I mean, we're going to go on and we're going to go on as a great nation, but we do have to keep things in perspective. It's the Civility Book, A Guide to Building Bridges Across the Political Divide by myself and Stephen Henderson. Pick one up. And thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you, Dave. It's been fun.
Sure has. Thanks, Nolan.